magic time. You know what time it is. It's when someone comes along that you don't know very much about, and then Dell says, "Hey, you're on Interiors, the show that's the inside of everything that's anything." And you get excited. You don't know who the guest is. You never met him. Don't know him very well if you did know him. But you're about to find out just what makes the great writer, producer, director, filmmaker, Barry Gaines tick here on Interiors. Welcome to the show, young man. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Del.
What's going on?
Man, just busy, staying busy, it's keeping this heart going and production alive and just doing what I have to do.
How long have you been in the industry?
Since I started when I was 10 years old, but.
Wait, how'd that happen?
Well, it was funny because a friend of mine actually got a camera when he was a kid. And he just said, "Hey, listen, do you want to make some movies?" I didn't know what it was. We were like, "Yeah, okay." We just started screwing around, like around the house and everything else. And that was like my first introduction to this filmmaking. I mean, I like movies like any kid would or whatever, cartoons and stuff. But really start going in and trying to create something of your own, going through the process that young. It was
now take me back. You're 10 years old.
I was 10 years old.
Your friend says, "Hey, listen, I got a camera." Now, I don't want to put an expiration date on your life, but you're giving me a clue as to how old you are when you say that, because be in any community as a young person and get a camera, that means we're working in the VHS days.
Yeah, man, VHS.
Yeah,
VHS, the machine itself.
The
whole machine.
Yeah.
So I started when that started. So it was a Hitachi. But that's what it was. That's my introduction pretty much when I was a kid. And from then on, I just started to do different things, going to music business, went to music school, worked for Virgin Records, worked for Warner Brothers, worked for Relativity Records, A&E Records.
Slow down, because there's a lot to unpack here. You're going to the record industry. You used to be in the movie business. Now you're already a record mogul. Which is it?
Yeah, I was actually doing both. Listen, when you're young.
Now go slow, because I don't want to rush through this because people want to know. So
no, man, I got too much.
You're 10 years old. You're 10 years old. Your friend, what's your friend's name again? His first name.
Actually, Philip Herman is the one.
All right, so Philip says, "I got a camera."
Yeah.
Who's the first girl you tried to put on camera?
A girl named Christine that was a next door neighbor.
Now, slow down, because I want the audience to feel this, not just hear it.
Oh yeah.
Was Philip older than you or younger than you?
He was older than me.
How much older?
4 years.
So I got a 14-year-old, I got a 10-year-old, and I got a hot neighbor. Am I painting a picture here?
You know what? We weren't that smart yet.
I didn't say that, because I don't believe you have to be smart to follow the male hormone anywhere.
Yeah, you know what it was? It wasn't even that. It's like it was so weird when it comes to filmmaking, because we weren't even thinking of that more than we were just thinking of like just showing people something that we did.
I want to disagree, because if it was just about showing people what you could have done, you would have got that fat kid, the diabetic kid from across the street. But you didn't go get him.
No,
what was her? Just give me her first name. What was her first name again?
Christine.
That's who you got. And even the way you say it now, Christine, it's almost like you married her and lost her 6 years ago.
It was one of those girls that everyone liked.
That's where I'm getting to.
Remember those days? Yeah.
There ain't nothing. I'm not talking about sex. I'm just saying that 14 and 10 get together with a camera. Huh?
Yeah.
New artist, nouveau, and the first person they want to put on camera, that's a girl, is Christine. And everybody likes her.
Yeah, it was back. Yeah, there was a long, but and it was funny because, see, I grew up in New York, right? So in Queens. So you got to understand one thing about the culture there is that there's a lot of everything.
Right.
Like there's no like, man, she's the only one. There was it everywhere. So it was just the fact that who's closer, who's in arm's length. Let's try that. If they not, we go around the corner. If not, you go across the street. It's just a different thing. So
now, are you telling me now that you want to insult Christine 30 years later by telling me she just happened to be available?
Yeah, pretty much. That's how it is.
Was she the first one? Was she the first one you asked?
That was what you said. Who's in arm's length? And that's how you work your way down the line.
Do you still work that way?
No, you know what? Not anymore.
Because I do.
Wow. I mean, I work with right now with resources. Yeah, you're gonna have to. But arm's length is a little different now, brother. You know how that goes because now you got the whole technology thing. But going back to the '80s now, let's stay in the '80s for a minute. It was a little different then because you only knew what your neighborhood or your borough was mostly, and that was it. I mean, so you just had to deal with who was there, what you had, and then when you're young like that, you just want to kind of show off whatever you
Nice. So
had.
now, what did we show off? What did we shoot?
Oh man, we used to shoot nothing but action films,
Hmm.
horror films, and action films. I mean, that was it. We used to run around with the camera. We used to try to beat up each other. Then we had this mountain we used to call Saltine Mountain. It was a fucking mountain full of salt, and it was
Is it in
probably
New York?
this is in New York. Yeah, it was about probably maybe 4 stories tall, and it was there for years. And then we used to go there with the camera and they jump off, and we had everyone on the block come over there, girls and guys, and just start fighting like just madmen. And we just started filming that. Like the whole concept was just to see what we can capture.
When you say filming, who was directing?
Directing, like you go
Yeah.
way ahead of the time now. Like,
No, I'm not, and I'll tell you why. Because I know at 14 or 10, you've seen a movie or two.
yeah,
And
yeah,
if you're in the 80s, you know there's a lot of big time directors that are floating around the planet in the 80s, man. 'Cause everybody, Spike Lee was just almost coming up in the 80s, right?
right,
And
right.
there, yeah, and there was Matty Rich back then, right, with the Inkwell, and he raised his money in New York by simply going on a radio station saying, "I'm young, I'm black, I need your help." I think they raised $1 million. They said the first week with him on the radio.
Yeah, see, that's something that I wish we just didn't. Yeah, it wasn't around us that kind of thinking.
But
And
you understood there was someone in charge.
yeah, it was actually
So who was in charge of the camera? Was
pretty
it
much
Philip?
Yeah, Philip
Yeah,
Herman. Yeah, yeah. Actually, we
yeah.
call him Chip. So just call him Chip. And Chip was like, it was his deal. And he was the one that's really into filming. And I would just kind of go along for the ride. I'm freaking
What's he doing now?
he's a bus driver. Two kids.
Naturally.
And, yep, had a kid graduate from Brooklyn, Brooklyn College. And, so he's doing pretty well for himself, just kind of doing his thing, still doing little movies on the side. And, it happens. But it was one of those things when you start, you always think about where was the introduction of like whatever you do in life.
What a great way to start with something like that. To have your own creative team who wasn't too old so that they couldn't put you down and tell you how horrible you were if you made a mistake. But at the same time, they were learning too. So everything is an experiment.
Yeah, yeah, and it was so bad, but he didn't care. It was one of those things where it's you know what? It's almost relative to adults now when we make our own. Like people say, you know what? I don't care how bad it is. The fact I completed it and I got distribution that's out there. So when you just kind of break it down to like when you first start, you really never change. You just
That's the same. That's the same attitude as any major Hollywood player. Because I've been in the room. There's a great director, and he made a film called Glory with Denzel Washington. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
And he made a film called The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine my excitement when I get to go see his new film Defiant and to watch it with the director at a beautiful theater in a little city called Westwood, which is kind of like it used to be a real high-end town. It's where UCLA is.
Yeah.
University. So I'm in here and the place is packed in this movie, and I'm sitting not more than 20 feet from the director. And I just want to meet him, tell him what a fan I am, and say just how great. And the film starred Liev Schreiber and Daniel Craig.
Mm-hmm.
It was the biggest turd I had ever seen. I mean, you want to talk about a film made just for propaganda? This film was made just for propaganda, nothing more. This was just propaganda, nothing more. Yeah. And I'm sitting there, and I noticed that 99.999% of the people in the audience were Jewish because he was Jewish. Mm. So the girl I was with wasn't my wife. I think she was Jewish. No, wait, maybe she was. I'm not sure. I'll think about it. I'll figure it out. But they ate it as if it was manna from heaven, and it was horrible. I mean, this movie, it was horrible. Watch the movie, you'll see it.
I saw it. It was bad. I saw
it's bad. So when the people are running and they're They actually took out a battalion of tanks with horses and a few rifles. I just said, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I want to believe everything, you know.
I know. And you said
So anyway, so the
right.
movie ends, and he starts talking, and dude, why are you? This is horrible. This is unwatchable. This is the worst. And I get up and I leave. So I go outside, and the girl follows me. And there's a couple of other couples outside, and the one couple, I said, "Excuse me, are you Jewish?" And the woman said, "Yes." I said, "Can I ask you a question?" She said, "Sure." I said, "Was that movie any good?" She goes, "That was the worst piece of crap I think I've ever seen." I'm almost embarrassed to be a Jew putting that out into the world.
Good
I said,
God.
"What?"
Good God.
And she pops it out there. And she says it. So we start talking about and dissecting the film scene by scene by scene by scene, and also by. So I'm so livid that I get home and I write the worst review I can write. I put it on Yahoo, or Yahoo Film. It took me years to figure out why I never should have done that. And that's because you don't know what film is going to make it. You don't have any idea. No one knows.
We don't.
And to say something's bad, right? Depending on where you were, how much money you had, how bad the actors were acting, what the producer did to you, how the distributor acted, all these things weigh in on a director. I felt bad for him because I knew his good work. I knew he could do magnificent, top-notch, top 10 work.
Right.
But this just wasn't it. So don't be too harsh on yourself. When you say, I didn't know it was bad, I just want to get it out there, I proved they got distribution. Listen, that's a hallmark in itself. And then there's the other side of it. There might be somebody out in the world who loves it.
And and it's to the point now that over time, being in the industry as long as I have in both music and movies, is one thing that I learned, that there's always enough people out there for you to make a living on, no matter what you do. Your job
Someone's gonna like it.
Tap it in, and that's all you care about. And if you think of everything that way, you will be fine, because then it wouldn't matter what anyone says to you, because you have an army behind you that loves what you do. And if you can do that, then you can get through everything, because you need some type of a shield for you to get through this business, because it will hurt you, it will slow you down, and it will test your patience every single time.
Is it the business, or is it people involved in the business?
That's a good question.
I know. This is Interiors. We ask great questions.
No, and I think that it's more to do with the business and the people, because the business shapes people. Human nature is very fragile. We're like clay. And the business itself, what it requires for anything to be successful, anything to be completed, or anything that's be watchable or listenable, it's all about people's taste. And it's so vast that the industry itself starts to mold you a certain way. And I think that's what most of the time is not just maybe someone's fault saying they don't like you or you're doing bad work, is that you're trying to work your way through a minutia. You're trying to get noticed through a forest that's filled with the same shit that you've been trying to do. Mm-hmm. That's what's hard about the industry itself. And that is why I think most people have to understand one thing about being in this thing, that just be bullheaded. You really do. Some people always say, there's a common denominator with all of us, Del, that's you included, as being the director or producer, right? And there's one thing, if you notice, that we all kind of either sound the same, look the same. Mm-hmm. It's something there that it's a hardness to us. Mm-hmm. Over time. There's this brick that's like, it's hanging on our head all the time. We're always down. And they say, why look tired? Why are they always ready to yell at somebody or something? It's because you made us this way.
That's why I asked you, is it the business or is it the people? Because I never understood why every producer I met of any ilk was a piece of garbage. Like, I went through Hollywood for years, like, man, these people are just miserable bastards, right? So one day I got in a show on Spike TV, and it went pretty well. Everybody was happy. I made a lot of money. Yeah. And these people came in to meet me about some stuff, and this girl pulls aside. She goes, "No, you're really a dick." Like, I'm a dick. She goes, "Yeah, you're just an a-hole." I said, "Well, I got to be honest. It's funny that you feel that way about me, only because of everything I've done to get here, right? You were never
Yeah.
around for the down times or the bad times. And now that I've set rules for myself, now that I have a way that I work that's successful for me, you want to criticize that by saying that I'm a dick. When in effect, the industry and the people in this industry molded me into this thing you see in order for me to keep my head up long enough to get to the next project.
Hell yeah. Yes. Yes. They
You're,
me.
li- you're listening to Interius. I'm your host, Del Weston. That was our first segment. We're going to our very first break. Man, that was too fast. I'm sitting here with Barry Gaines. I'm having a great time. When we come back, I guarantee your great time continues. That's one thing I can say and mean. We'll be right back with more Barry Gaines here on Interius. Hey, this is Interius, and we're back with the great writer, producer, and award-winning director, Barry Gaines. Barry, we're talking about the industry. What happened in the industry that you didn't expect so far? Look back a few years to where you are now and say, what transpired that you did not expect? How did you grow?
It's almost like two questions there, but
It's three, but
but I'm gonna take it two. I'm just gonna
take a
combine.
shot.
I think what I've learned a lot was how much people are designed to do what they do,
Mm-hmm.
and you, as the creator or anyone involved, have to understand that and respect that.
Right.
Example: most actors, when I first started, I used to say, "Hey, listen, I'm going to give you guys the freedom. Like, here's a script or whatever, but I want you guys to kind of like do your thing. If you see something you want to do it." But what I've noticed over time is that actors don't want to do
Oh,
that.
no, they do less.
They want just tell me what to do. And then
Yeah.
when I speak to a director, then it's a little different. Then it's kind of like, well, this is what I want to do. I do this, I do that, and that's what I want. Then you have a producer, and that's your hustle man. That guy is always talking shit, always talking this, talking that.
Mm-hmm.
That's his job. You know what I mean? Because that's how he's sees design. And then talk to a composer. They're introverted. They want to stay in the home. They want to do their music. They don't want to go out. They don't want to take pictures all the time. You have people who are designed to do certain things. So when you become for me, when I really decided to say I'm going to be a director and producer and going through the process, I started noticing these things because I was putting everybody like on the same, like,
Mm-hmm. And everyone's equal.
and everyone's equal technically, but at the same time, they all are different. They're all in different slots. They're all in
No, everyone's
different.
not equal. I have to call you on that. And the reason I say that is that experience alone separates people. Talent alone separates people. Drive and desire separate people. So I think that we all may have the same capability. The question is, will we apply it the same way? And I found that to a very high degree to be changing on a constant basis, depending on who
That's
you're
a good way
working
of
with. Yeah.
well, who's going to apply it this way? Who's going to bring it to the 10? You know what I mean? You're
Mm-hmm.
here. I need you here. So everyone needs to be here. And if you are, then just do your job. And everyone has their little slots, and it will create this. We'll create this masterpiece if we can. It's just a team. So it's like any team. So you're only as strong as the weakest link.
So,
And I think that's the biggest thing I learned. Really, one of the biggest ones.
so I think that's a brilliant way to apply that, and I think that your democratic way of understanding the mindset of a person from one trade to the next, that they are created differently and they do have traits. Because I very rarely hear people even saying the trait of a director, the trait of a writer, the trait of not stereotypes, but traits. And you've
Right.
earmarked that for me beautifully. That's what this show is about, understanding someone's process. What has been the most difficult thing you've ever faced in this industry? Not personal, but that the industry taught you, the most difficult lesson you had to learn?
Is to get people to understand your vision. That is the hardest thing, especially when it comes down to funding. Not more of the creative part, the team, the people, because our mind works a different way. We look through a different lens. But when it comes to financing, when it comes to somebody who's designed just to kind of either make money or put things together or whatever it is, somewhere to that degree, they don't look at the same through the same eyes. And for me, and that's why they call it pitch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you pitch and you set your pitch up because you have to understand who you're speaking to and how they think and how they
Mm-hmm.
look, and you find your pitch to them. But that is one of the hardest things when it comes to that. That's why I'm still struggling with that now.
What
When it
what are
comes,
you struggling with?
I think I'm struggling with still under getting people to understand like my story. right? Because my story is a combination of many, but something you really haven't seen before, but then you have. So if people want to say, hey, listen, is it like a
why don't you just tell me about the unique parts of your story then?
I do, but sometimes I think it's to a point where I have to, is most people get it when they actually see it.
Mhm.
It's like anything else. It's no
Oh, you
different.
not your personal story, but the story you're telling in your script.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's
Okay,
no
I'm sorry,
different.
I got him confused. My apologies.
Oh, that's okay. No, that's all right. No, it's just it's no different when when George Lucas talked about some damn Star Wars and Ewoks and Jawas and stuff. And he said, "What the hell are you talking about?" And then on top of that, you're on number 4. What the hell happened to number 1, 2, and 3? Well, don't worry about that.
Do you understand Star Wars? Do you get it? Is it a religion for you like most people?
Oh yeah, I understand it wholeheartedly because if you know his background, it was so much in your face that you didn't even see it. Like he's Jewish, yes, right? So stormtroopers, I didn't know they were really called that during the war.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So but no one did. Like no one really knew that. But he
I
put
knew it.
there. We did, but a lot of people didn't over time. Like when it first came out in '77, and then also the suits, for the Empire, like they represent, of course, the Nazis.
Right.
And all these little things that he did purposely for his people, but at the same time made it entertaining for everyone else.
But do you think that was a sellout? Because to me, when you look at a science fiction film, let's take, for instance, Dune, right? Now, I'm sure Dune at the original version, which wasn't that great, they had to have symbolism from all types of things as well. And Kubrick did it in his films as well.
Mm-hmm.
But they'd make it more sublime, right? So if you're going to show a Nazi uniform in Star Wars, right, maybe you could have been a bit more sublime, right? And there's a word, janissary, right? And a janissary is a soldier. I think that for the purposes of dramatic impact, the word janissary sounds a lot better than just soldier, because there's a mystery to it. So I think that if he had taken a little more time, like I know a lot of the robots were named, they would take the names from the bottom of a paper cup and then read the name and then or the model number, and then they would make that their character. That seems kind of lazy to me. And so I would have loved that he made it a much more in-depth, serious type of thing, because for many people now that's become their religion. I had a neighbor, man, he thought Star Wars was the story of Christ. I'm like, dude, what's wrong with you? It's a movie.
Those are the people, those are the 1%ers. And 2%.
Well, God, but he could have at least given them a little more, right? Because I always hear people say when they leave a Star Wars film, it wasn't that good. Anyway, and they've got complaints, right? And then you got these defenders that come in. It's like Trump. You got everybody has an opinion. Most people hate Trump, but then people who support him, they'll defend him against anything, right? And I think that's give a lot of that, especially with directors. So you're talking about, of course, Lucas with Star Wars, but then you have the same thing with M. Night Shyamalan, right? A guy who pretty much despises most Americans, in my opinion. He was even on a radio show or TV show making fun of Middle America. And I thought to myself, you're not even from here. Why are you making, because we put you on a pedestal. And we love what hates us. We always love what hates us. I never understood the NAACP because they were always trying to become white, right? They were never trying to be black. They were always trying to be what whites had. And I found that.
I mean, it goes a little deeper than that. I don't think you can just kind of brush it off.
I'll tell you why I feel that way, because I've been through it. I'm an older guy who's been around a long time. And I will tell you, there is no race more talented than you will find in the African American race or the African race. So who's the best golfer in the world, or was for the longest time?
Oh, yeah, we know who that answer is.
Tiger Woods. Who's the best tennis player? Female. Yeah. Right? You're going to go with the Williams. Who's the best actor? You got to say Denzel Washington, right? So if you start going through all these things, you see all this talent. I would suggest to groups like the NAACP or the rest of these groups, don't try to be like someone else. Try to be the best you that you are. You may find that that's a lot higher up on the level than the person you were trying to be.
Well, you know what happens with that too, Del, is that it starts off that way. It's just that the original creators die off. They get old. And then the new ones come along and the society changes. And they think they go in one way and they don't. Like I wasn't ever into, to get into that whole thing. That's another discussion. But just really quickly, if I was, if you look at where it all started, it was where it should have gone. Now, of course, they need to pay bills. They got mortgages. They got this. It gets bigger. And then you start to change like anything else. the hardest thing in the world is to stay who you are. What did Bruce Lee say years ago, right? So the hardest thing,
He
right?
said,
Hardest thing to do
can you
is,
please help me up? Mike Pick just knocked me down.
yeah, right.
No, I'm not joking because Mike Pick was a guy that I love. Michael Pick is one of the greatest Kempo practitioners in the world. And I'm talking to him one day. He's talking about Bruce Lee. He says, man, we used to beat his ass every Thursday night at the Ed Parker studio on Walnut. I mean, what do you mean? He used to come for the fights on Thursday. He weighed 145 pounds.
He
I don't
was.
care how fast you are. You know, you get in the ring with somebody 6'3" that knows what they're doing, and you're 145, 5'4". I'm sorry. It ain't going to be pretty. That's why they have weight classes in the UFC, because a big guy is not going to have as much trouble with a little guy, right?
Right, right.
But anyway, what did Bruce Lee say? I digress. I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. I
But
don't want any hate mail about
I'm a
Bruce Lee.
I'm a big martial arts fan, man, and I can tell you stories. And it's
Well, I'm a big martial artist. I'll tell you stories.
yeah, exactly. You go. But I was just always saying that. I always like that when he said the hardest thing in the world to be is yourself, because you grow up
Right.
everybody else.
Right.
Right. You really don't really know who you really are. Some do, and it's true. You know, and you try your best to do that whatever you do. You know,
And that is my point. See, that's the thing. I think that once you set a level to someone else's top, you reduce your level because your level could have been higher, right? Like if you think about Kobe, for instance, everybody loves Kobe. Kobe's dead, but everybody loves him. Okay. Who did what he did the way he did it? Nobody. Who did what Wilt Chamberlain did the way he did it? Nobody.
right.
No color, no race, no creed, no gender. Nobody did it. So I'm just suggesting that I think, and feeding back into one of the points you made earlier, yeah, we're all pretty equal when it comes to the basics. But then there's the other side of it, the unknowable, the amount of dedication, the amount of drive, the amount of want, the amount of talent, the amount of skill. So I think when large groups get together to pull one group of people one way or the other, you cannot have a standard that may be lesser than they could reach if you just left them alone, right? Without seeing that standard. And that's why I think a lot of filmmakers default to bad film, or they default to crappy special effects or something, right? Because I've seen a lot of films where people go, oh, well, so-and-so got away with it. And I'm dealing with a guy now, and he bought the Lloyd Kaufman book on writing, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, why would you read a book by a schlock pedophile to teach you how to do anything? Mm. He's like, what? I go, why would you read a book by a guy who makes schlocky, crappy, horrible films like The Toxic Avenger of all things? Things that are so low that it cannot help but lower your quality, because you're in a pool of crap. Now, if you were in a pool of pristine water and you had 20-foot depth and you had a diving board that's 80 feet high or whatever, you could become the best diver in the world on your own, right? You'd see, you watch, and then you learn, then you do. But if I put you in a cesspool and say, well, now go be a great diver, it's never going to happen. It requires that you have, right, that higher standard.
But you know what's really funny about what you said, that Del?
What?
I want to just kind of bounce off of that.
Please do.
It's great what you say, because think of it this way too. It's like a criminal. If you're going to do a crime, you either better do the most horrific crime in the world or nothing, because you have to be extreme for the parties of any place to say, you know what, you're so bad.
Yep.
Bad that people gravitate to it because they can't believe how bad
it is.
How you love it so much, and to the point where it's just so good. It's like, oh my God, that's genius. Mm-hmm. So to the point that, listen, guys, if you want to do anything, man, you know what? If he's going to be in that cesspool, that motherfucker better be under the cesspool. It's the only way he's going to make money, because it has to be a point where people can't believe it exists.
But then he can't be the best that he is, because he's already just repeating the cesspool. And that's what I don't want. I want to see people come out and say, wait a minute, who do you compare yourself to? I don't compare myself to anybody. I'm the only one of me there is. And this is what I'm going to do. That's what I love to hear. But that, I don't get that very often.
No, you really don't.
You know, because I'm slow.
You know what, too? It's just, when I was in Virgin Records, my boss said something to me that I never forgot. He said, B, there's a lot of people that do what you do, but there's only a few that do it right, that do it well. Try to work the best to be those few. Because, like I said, there are millions of people who can sing. It's only a few that have an original voice or could sing to a point. There's a bunch of directors out there,
Right.
but only a few that actually see what others don't.
Who's one of your favorite directors? Who do you like?
James Cameron is my favorite of all time, hands down.
And what is your favorite project by James Cameron? Because we just had a big talk about Titanic, which I hate, by the way. I hate that movie. I hate it.
I didn't hate Titanic at all,
Oh.
but Abyss is probably I think was one of those gems that people he doesn't get credit for. Whereas
when
because I went into Titanic knowing what it was about. Like Cameron is so ahead of things that he knew what he was doing. He wasn't there to give you a lesson.
Right.
He was there to give you a spectacle. He said, if you want to listen, go to National Geographic.
Right.
If you want a spectacle and have a good time because you paid your $9,
right.
See this. And you know how it ends. So I'm going to make it pretty. I'm going to make it just big and bad.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to see something never seen before. And that was it. I think it's just it's to the point where he never said, man, this is the way it has to happen. He always said, I try to make things as accurate as I can, like inside, like how things broke, like the technical part of it. But the overall of it, he knew what he was doing because you can look at his past.
Now, I'm not so sure because here's the thing. You mentioned that movie, and maybe you'll share this with me, but you mentioned that movie, and I think of one scene in particular. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio is in the ship. Ed Harris, her husband, is outside the ship. And he's about to encounter these I don't want to be a spoiler, but these things that are not human. And he's running out of oxygen. And he types, I love you, wife, as he's passing out. Because he can't speak to her because he has to type it because they don't have the communications.
Right.
I almost fell through my chair. I was so touched and moved by that.
Yes.
By just that scene alone.
Yes.
And then the ship comes to the top, and you got funny man Chris Elliott from Cabin Boy playing a serious role. It just ruined the entire film. Why would you put Chris Elliott, who'd been doing the most outrageous things in film and TV on David Letterman, he just ruined the entire experience for me.
I don't know about that because he didn't really have a role.
He had a role big enough to make me know this movie wasn't real.
Well, it was. He was there, but he didn't really do anything. It was one of those things like, yo, you want a job? Let me help you out. Here you go.
Not at level. I got a great Cameron story for you when we come back. Hey, you're listening to Interiors. This is part one of the great Barry Gaines interview. To hear part two, you just need to hang around and let this one end and click the button on the one that says part two. You've been listening to Interiors. We'll be right back with part two.